In the heavenly palace, he reflects on the practice and mentions that today is the 15th birthday and talks about their father. The priest said it was time to go to work and travel. He runs across the rocky terrain and shouts "Stop!" in an attempt to stop the flying object. He, breathing heavily, says that he has finally cornered the enemy and orders the slime to prepare for battle. He bites hard on a long object and says he's just getting started. A knife got stuck in the mud, making a sound like chopping. He, having caught his breath, is surprised that he found a magic stone and asks what it is. He throws an object into the air and says it glows, then orders the status to be revealed. He studies the game menu that appears in front of him with the stats of Jade's character, noting his health, mana, and skill points. He deftly caught the flying dagger and said it was cool. He falls back to the ground, thinking that it seems this world is over after all. Some time later, someone asked in surprise whether the other person's change of profession had really backfired on him. An old man yells at a man, accusing him of disgrace and returning as a newcomer, and he apologizes and promises to improve. He suddenly noticed the flying bag and tried to catch it, expressing surprise. He said it was time to say goodbye while the others stood at the window watching the departing. He stands against the backdrop of mountains and listens to a man say that this is forever. He walks down the road, thinking about how his father always cared about the opinions of others and suddenly abandoned it. He ponders what to do next while looking at the sky with clouds. He says he was engrossed in a VR game called NSO, immersing himself in another world as a person from Japan. He reflects on player rankings and the importance of NSO memory fragments as a key to life in the modern world. The image shows a new player standing on a map and another character on top of a tower with a crown, while the text talks about a game for the strongest in the world. He noticed something serious when the headache had already subsided. He notices that the level of civilization is just beginning, looking at a small animal. He explains that there are different professions besides knights and magicians. He exclaimed in surprise when he saw a transparent screen with information in front of him. He grins and says, "Heh heh," and then firmly refuses, saying, "Oh, fuck it." He said he arrived in the city by ferry on the Sanzu River to buy a knife. He runs with a knife, thinking about the need for experience and the unwillingness to mess around with slugs for a long time. He decided that he had had enough rest and it was time to go hunting, realizing that without new skill points he would not become stronger. He attacks quickly, throwing a knife at the target, but suddenly collides with the enemy, which causes him to be surprised. He ponders the choice of skill and decides to acquire it despite his doubts. He hears a voice in his head and admits that it's scary, but worth a try, after which he receives a message about purchasing a search. He closes his eyes in concentration, and a pattern of circles and dots appears on his forehead. He says with a smile that with the new skill there will be a sign of slime, and is glad that he was finally able to do it. He stands looking at the sunset and thinks that he needs to come up with something with them, adding that he only has magic stones. He turns to the bartender, who looks at him in surprise, and then he tiredly rubs his forehead in front of a sign with a picture of the sun and moon. He looks at the magic stone and thinks about creating a magic weapon using a magic circle. He regrets his past professionalism and reveals a rare item only available at the end of the game. He explains that creating a stone engraving is hard work, only possible with high levels of handcraftsmanship. The next day, a creature with wings and a tail flies over the desert landscape. He goes into the forest with a magic tool and says that if you use it correctly, then very soon there will be a result, noting that it was close. He watches a ferocious monster in the forest and thinks that even with good experience in battles, it is difficult to defeat him. He hides behind a tree and watches the approaching ferocious boar roaring in the forest. He abruptly lets go of the object he was holding in his hand. He stands in the forest and tells that yesterday he acquired the skill of replacing one magic stone with another. He explains that the magical barrier has disappeared and that this is his biggest advantage. He reasons that if he replaces the boar crystal with a slime crystal, he will feel more confident. He explains that he can make the boar appreciate him and warns that the boar's mana will decrease and the protective barrier will disappear. He is happy that the exchange works, but warns that there are limitations and it does not work on some monsters, such as dragons. He was surprised, and the voiceover explained that the skill is only useful for mid-level monsters and becomes useless beyond that. He watches a large, strange hive attached to a tree, hidden in the shadows. The image shows a large insect sitting on a surface with wavy patterns. He talks about the number of people looking for food and notes that newbies usually avoid them due to the lack of help from the masters. He shows his hand of cards and says that he has a chance, but the insects can't cope alone. He stands with a dagger in his hand in front of a swarm of large wasps in the forest, preparing for battle. He received 500 experience and decided to take a better skill, but refused the offer since it required 100 skill points. He thinks with fear that he will never get used to the voice that announces the receipt of the storage. He explains that he can now carry several large items at once, calling it storage. He said thoughtfully that there was one more thing and then agreed with it. He addresses the large beast in the forest, calling him his friend, and wonders why he didn't take the vault earlier. He thinks about the possibility of strengthening the storage and says that then he will have enough space for a threefold increase. He resolutely offered to take the pig, folding his hands in prayer. In front of the Adventurers Guild building, a man stands looking out at the backdrop of mountains and a sky with clouds. He walked up to the door and read the instructions on what to click to enter. He asked if he could sell his things here, expressing doubt. He approaches a group of people who are studying and tying up a dragon under a canopy, while a woman behind the counter watches the proceedings. He suddenly apologized, putting his hands into the portal against the backdrop of mountains and sky. He asks in surprise what is going on, and the other one states that he wants to sell something, holding an item at the portal. She panics and asks him what he is doing, trying to stop him, but he just remains silent. He's trying to make some extra money and explains that it's his baggage, while the other one is doubtful, asking if the beginner's storage skill isn't a universal one. He explains that they usually carried bags with a bottomless pocket, and another confirms that there were no problems. He explains that it is magic for storing objects, and she asks again, surprised by the word magic. She hands over her adventurer's certificate with a smile, and he says in surprise that he doesn't have one yet and didn't think it would come to this. He says he might fail the entrance exam and she calls him weird while watching the dragon. He said he had killed a boar, and she asked if he was afraid of failing the entrance exams. He is surprised by the reaction and explains that the skill change is not so easy to use, while they silently look at the pig and the girl next to her. She agreed to buy it but said she needed to register it, and he sighed with relief. She reflects that she doesn't have any defensive or offensive skills now, but the exam will become easier. She asks to wait and says there is something else. He confidently says that he will pass the exam, and she happily replies that now everything will become much easier. He turns to Jade, asking her to listen to him carefully. A female employee is surprised that he is new while reviewing his application while another man stands nearby. He says that's not all and asks if there are any other ways to pass the exam, to which she agrees. He doubts, and she, laughing, promises to make a concession because he killed the boar. He said yo in surprise as he sat surrounded by people standing around him, and a strange dark figure was visible against the sky. He asked her if she wanted to register as an adventurer. The man introduced himself as Ramon and promised to destroy the monster if he failed the exam. He tells her to give up adventurism and soberly assess her strength, but she resolutely refuses. He stated with confidence that he would definitely pass this exam. He agrees and says that he chooses the target himself, asking if he dares to go after large monsters. Panoramic view of the western forest with mountains and rocks against the sky. He uttered a short word, expressing doubt or dissatisfaction. He, with a sword on his back, and she, with one eye closed, walk through the forest. He looks around warily, and she silently follows him. He says he's moving forward with painful confidence, as if he knows where the monster is, and the other one confirms that he does. He asked if she had detection magic, and she responded in surprise, asking if he was a seeker. He panics and demands that someone return immediately, expressing despair and anxiety. He demonstrates enormous strength by crushing the ground under his feet and tearing things apart with his teeth. And the text says that the earth trembles, and that is what they called him. A monster called the Army Destroyer is fighting a group of warriors, and one of them explains that this is happening because of its power. He explains that his technique requires a change. Jade calmly explains that the enemy is light and has long noticed them, despite the others' warnings about mortal danger. He says he can kill the monster and rest easy while another man holds his head and a third stands nearby watching. He desperately admits the end, and she tries to stop him, asking him to listen to her. He casts Change, summoning magical energy as the horned creature reacts violently. The open mouth with sharp teeth of the growling creature takes up the entire frame, creating a sense of menace and tension. A huge creature with horns falls to the ground, destroying everything around it and making a loud roar. A man accuses another of altering the crystals, who explains that he used a skill to swap them due to a lack of energy. He explains that if the monster is left alone, it will not die, but due to the differences in the crystal's power, it had to be struck. The man confidently says they can win, asking to leave the rest to him, and Jade is worried about the exam and asks to wait. He asks for forgiveness, and the other agrees and says that time must be given, and he himself will die. He sees that the skill has reached 400 and says that he needs more skills. He stands by the body and says that it seems like he died. He orders the use of the storage, expressing approval of what is happening. He explained that the magic belonged to him, and the other was surprised and asked where the man had disappeared to. He asks with surprise if this is magic, and she confidently answers that yes, it is her magic. He awkwardly tries to speak, and another asks if he passed the exam, to which he receives an affirmative answer. He joyfully raised his hands against the backdrop of village houses and said that now he could go home. Two people are walking down the road, and he raises his hand in greeting to someone in front of him. He said hello, and he asked the man standing next to him with a sword on his back how the exam went. The man enthusiastically says that the child has done something amazing and can immediately rise to rank B, and Jade reacts with surprise. The man leaves, saying he will call the guild master, and the woman in glasses asks anxiously if he is joking. He explains that he just wanted to register, but they are trying to push him somewhere else. The older man asked what had happened, and the woman replied that the newcomer was as skilled as a B rank. Ramon enthusiastically talked about the exam, and he listened while the other two watched them thoughtfully. The man explains that the boy has special magic with the vault, and the old man doubts whether he should believe him. The man asked if it was Miss Sylvia, and she replied that she had definitely seen her. He asks hopefully if this is true and asks to show it to him. He raised his hand and said it was a vault, and the others listened to his demonstration. He warned the others that they should move away a little and raised his hands, causing a magical effect in front of the group of people. He uses his power to hold back a giant creature that falls and destroys the land around him. Jade stopped in surprise as three men with different expressions looked at him through the clouds of smoke. He shows the device and explains that it can be used to swap monster crystals, asking if Ramon told him about it. She enthusiastically declares that the riddle is solved, and the old man points in surprise to the monster he brought before the exam. An old man explains how to replace the main weapon, while two men listen attentively against the backdrop of a destroyed floor. The elderly man assures that there will be no problems if the interlocutor can prove something. He notices evidence that Jade is an adventurer by looking at a book with a symbol on the cover. He explains that he wanted to assign a B rank, but she was registered as an E rank and her strength did not double as expected. She explains that there is a rank advancement system and he can qualify for B rank, to which he is surprised and asks, "What?" He is surprised and thanks her, and she offers to play again and adds something important. He happily reports that the price for the material brought today is exactly 40,000 gold. He stands on top of the mountain and tells you that he has developed a new strategy for collecting mana more efficiently. Jade revealed that he spent 50 skill points and increased his search 3 times, testing 20 different tactics as preliminary preparation. He said he thought he found something while standing on the top of a mountain surrounded by fog. He stands on a forest path and looks into the distance, surrounded by trees and rocks. He talks about the number of monsters in the forest, mentioning 6 moles, 1 underground worm, 2 boars, and 15 giant wasps. Jade casts the spell Change and activates the magical artifact, causing a vortex of energy in front of her. He summons a magical shield to protect himself from attacking beasts. He stands on a raised platform, deflecting numerous flying shells that explode around him. He raises his hand, summoning a magical shield that begins to form and surround him with powerful energy. He stands watching as a huge vortex of dark energy forms in the sky above him. He stands in the center of a vortex of energy, surrounded by swirling currents of air or light. He stands among the evil wolves and says that he now understands, despite their threats. He explains that they are facing phantoms, wolf demons that absorb magical energy and are invulnerable to reflective magical attacks. She regrets that she did not notice earlier that the lack of a physical shell makes the exchange of magical stones mortally dangerous for all living things around them. He raised his hand and exclaimed that he was using magical power, causing a powerful energy explosion around him. He explains that the Phantom Core is a magical stone that can restore a person's magical power. He reflects on the fact that such stones are sold for huge sums of money on the black markets and wonders why he hasn't taken such action before. The hero explains that the magical tools will work without interruption if everything goes smoothly, but to activate them you need to use the right spell. He stands in the middle of the ruined landscape, explaining that the process was interrupted, but the effect of the magical catastrophe did not occur. The voice explains that the magical catastrophe absorbs energy, destroying weak monsters and creating new ones imbued with strong magical energy. Jade explains that you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone and obtain a rare magic stone, Phantom Core, by using SP above 300. He notices the emergence of new skills, including rapid regeneration, martial arts, and assassination, and is surprised that there are even 2 of them. He happily talks about improving his skills and is ready to test his strength in the open air. He stands near the building and looks at a huge flying stone, surrounded by an explosion and falling fragments. Creates a powerful energy blast, directing it towards the enemy. He said thoughtfully that now a worthy opponent would come to fight and show all his power. He explains that the enemy's attacks are strong and it will not be easy to defeat him, although he is inferior in physical strength. He wonders out loud whether he can defeat the enemy without using magic skills, standing in front of a beast-like creature on a desert plain. He notices the enemy's anger and says that he can easily predict all his actions due to their pattern. He notices that someone is running quickly straight towards him. He was surprised to notice that the enemy had decided to use a different fighting technique. He jumps across the rocky landscape and thinks that this is interesting. He jumps on the enemy and says that he is still easy to read. He watches as the ground explodes before him, and in the distance lies a fallen creature. He activates the vault and skill points appear on the screen, first 150, then 230. He scratched his head thoughtfully, and then walked cheerfully along the mountain road, humming a melody. He watches a group of people standing near a large tree and notices that one of them is covering his face with his hand. He hides behind a tree and asks who these people are, watching them from afar. 3 men discuss a quick sale of goods for a huge sum of money while Jade sits in the shade between the trees, watching them. He looks forward with a neutral expression, hiding one eye under his hair. He sits by the tree and reflects on how he can't just leave, even though he understands that he shouldn't interfere in other people's affairs. He, wearing a hood, notices an approaching luminous object and watches it closely, preparing for action. He strikes unexpectedly, and she reacts to the attack with surprise and notices the danger. He delivers a powerful kick to his opponent, who falls to the ground in the forest among the tall trees. 2 men are seriously discussing a situation. One of them is talking about layoffs. He orders the status to be revealed, confirming his 90 skill points as 2 pursuers run towards him and 1 lies on the ground. They discuss that someone wants to prevent them from getting extra SP points and are surprised by an unexpected event. He explains that to defeat dangerous criminals, you need to stun and paralyze the enemy in order to cast curses and destroy them. He explains that he immediately realized that he was facing bandits and disarmed one of them to gain skill points. Two men are surprised to hear a stranger appear and ask who he is. He says with a sword that although he has the body of a child, his mind and soul belong to an adult, admitting his unemployment. He replies that they will look at it again, after which the girl suddenly attacks with an energy blow, causing him shock and surprise. He swings sharply, shouting, and the other retreats, raising his hand in defense. He says that he is not to be trifled with and that he is so strong, and the other one remarks that she still hasn't come to her senses. She lies unconscious on the ground, and someone decides to free her from the ropes. He noticed the mighty eagles in the sky and was surprised by their appearance. He calls to approach him, standing in a bright spot among the trees, while huge birds soar nearby. He raises his hand to the glowing ball and confirms his action, while a huge bird watches him in surprise. He stands among the huge feathers, holding sharp blades in his hand, noting that the mighty eagles attacked at the most opportune moment. He orders action, thanks, and chooses to receive additional power. She lies there and tries to say something, making the sound M. He is glad that she woke up, and she is confused and asks where they are. She spoke to him excitedly, grabbing him by the shoulders, and he looked at her in surprise in the forest. She apologizes and complains of dizziness, and he reassures her that the victim is unconscious and will not touch her. He asked if she remembered what happened before the kidnapping and wondered if anyone else had helped them. She says with a smile that it seems she was simply deceived when asked whether she was really kidnapped. He said that being an artist was interesting and asked what she created, to which she replied that she always carried her tools with her. She enthusiastically declares that she is a sculptor and can create good sculptures, and another person repeats the word sculptor in surprise. He apologized for the rush, and she asked in confusion what the hell was in front of them. He explained that to level up you need to collect items, and she noted that he was a budding adventurer. They discuss magical abilities, where she explains the creation of magical tools, and he admires and understands her reaction. She thanks him for his support, but doubts her abilities, and he asks for help, explaining that he is not a professional and the tools may be of poor quality. He explained that magical instruments could be created by hand, and she thought about it and asked again, clarifying. She thoughtfully replies that she thinks she can try and help. He hopefully asks if she will really help, and she replies that this will be her gratitude for her help. Jade offered to introduce himself, and she replied that she was very glad to meet Gina. They shake hands and he calls her he. He raised his hand and began to speak, starting with the word, "By the way." He suggested checking how much his level would rise after catching the guys, and the other admitted that he had completely forgotten and needed to fix some things. He apologized for the delay, and she was surprised that storage magic was actually possible and cool. He asks Gina to help with magical items, offering to try if she doesn't mind, and she pays attention to what is happening. He is surprised, asking if she has locked the table while she presses the wooden mechanism. He said that everything was fine, and she concentrated on carving out wood, hitting the workpiece with a hammer. He is surprised that only 3 minutes have passed, and she has already finished work and announced it. He warned her to stay away because of the danger of magic, and she replied that she hoped it would work. He, holding a knife, says that he will not be able to explain his actions to Gina, but understands that he needs to try, although he is not sure of success. He explains that one way to obtain SP is to cast a curse and eliminate evil, and mentions a stone with a magical pentagram made by Jade. He speculates that the bandits who fainted could have been handed over to the guild and torn to pieces in court, and that there is a higher organization behind the human trafficking. He thanks Gina for helping him finish what he started, and she is glad that everything worked out. Ramon called out to Jade in surprise, and another man asked her why she was there while he was writing something down at the counter in the guild. He said he didn't remember exactly, but the amount was around 400 million, and she replied that she had bought the equipment and completed the mission. He talks about eliminating a shadow wrestler and a snake, while his interlocutor boasts about selling phantom poison for 3 million. He says with surprise and admiration that he was able to defeat the phantom and calls it the Phantom Core. He asks Jade in surprise how many months it took her to sell everything she got from her missions, and clarifies whether it was in one day. She is shocked by the amount of 1 day and 400 million, and he listens to her with surprise. She reports that they have finally finished examining the bandits' magical equipment and invites them to follow her, adding that she approaches the matter responsibly. He explained that 3 thieves were caught here. One used magic to escape, and she exclaimed, "Wow!" in surprise, watching the map. He uses the search ability, but cannot find the person he needs, assuming that he is still sleeping. He sheepishly apologizes for the awkwardness, and she says with delight that yesterday Ramon told everyone about his successes and the power to destroy the earth with 1 finger. He said he had rented rooms for Gina and work, and she asked if he really wanted to do that today. She assures him that everything will be ready in 3 hours, and he praises her for the quality, noting that the main thing is not speed. He turned to Jade, who was sitting at the table, and then headed for the door. He asked, "Yes," and she thanked him for everything he had done for her and admitted that she was incredibly grateful. He knocked on the door and then entered the room, looking out from behind it with curiosity. He explained that he was so tired that he fell asleep at his workstation while she was sleeping peacefully next to him. He looks at the cards and notices that they are absolutely identical. He hopes to increase his SP today with the help of magic tools against the backdrop of a rocky landscape. He says he has 66 standard tools and 1 for a wide range of action against strong enemies. He says that the threat zone is a rare and forbidden tool for beginners and is practically never used by professionals in attacks. He is upset about the failure with the magic tools, and the other explains that you can control them and summon phantoms to increase SP. He walks through the forest and talks about searching, then notices something ahead. He notices something in surprise and tries to figure out what it is. He called out the name of the attack, Divine Arrow, and a huge arrow struck the target, causing the onlooking bird to be surprised. He stands on the shore, watching the splash of water, and says that he did not expect to meet such a rare monster here. He happily proclaims that he is indeed a lucky man as the glowing object hovers above his hand and then falls into it. He holds a strange object in his hand with a smile, sitting on the ground next to a sword and a mysterious plant. He says that the sword must first be processed by holding it firmly by the handle and blade. He examines the fish and says that after processing it can be used as a weapon. He decides to open his status and senses another monster approaching, despite being warned not to use the crescent blade he received. He stopped abruptly in the forest, noticing a strange creature hiding among the trees and rocks. He says in surprise that he has never met such a thing and calls the creature a shadow monster. She declared that she was ready, expressing determination in her gaze. He casts the spell Crescent Blade Magic and releases a powerful energy sword swing that destroys the surrounding area. He stands on a forest path with a sharp fish-shaped weapon and marvels at its awesomeness, noting that he assumed it was sharp. He explains the power of the Crescent Blade and the influence of the Divine Arrow on enhancing his magic, capable of destroying everything in its path. He explains that he needs to increase the shockwave amplification effect by holding a figurine with a tail in his hand. He explains the need to engrave a pentagram on a magic stone and promises to find a good blacksmith upon returning to the guild. He explains that he doesn't have time to go back to the city and ask Gina, so he will try to do it right himself and not ruin the stone. The image shows a cloudy sky with light shadows, with no visible characters or action. He thinks his pentagram is pretty good, but admits that Gina would have done a better job with the awkward object. He decided to test his strength, noticing that everything seemed to be level, and headed towards the target through the forest. He sits on a tree branch and says that his task is to destroy all the monsters that encroach on the magic stone. The hero notices that the bees have formed a buzzing sphere hiding the pentagram, and counts the boars and werewolves around. He activates the item and says it's time to attack to get more points by adding monsters from the sky and underground. The image shows Jade engaging an opponent with a powerful energy blast that causes a bright flash of light. She shot up sharply, leaving a swift trail behind her. For creatures with a bright aura make sounds, expressing tension and readiness for battle. He counted the numbers and decided that it was enough, watching the glowing figures in the forest. Jade casts Hinge Attack, summoning 3 vicious wolves that charge forward. He checks the increase in his skills and says that physical strength and magical abilities have increased by plus 17, after which he places the item in the storage. He is happy with his new skills and is confident that he can now defeat the boar. Looking at his performance, he asks if the other person is sure, who answers in the affirmative, and notes that he has added points to his physical and magical abilities. He explains that the IX skill allows one to see the internal organs and weak points of living beings, from muscles to the condition of organs. He decided to take out the magic stone and invest skill points into search, noting that he tried to combine both skills and it seemed to work. The woman praised him for the neat kill and noted the lack of wounds, and he agreed with her words. He laughs and explains that skill defines purpose, and she says that she didn't understand anything and asks to speak her language. He sheepishly says that he was just lucky last time, and the other decides not to do it again, remembering her amazing reaction. He asks where they make weapons nearby, and she replies that the fish is rare, but he wants to make a weapon out of it and thinks it's not bad. He looks silently through his round glasses, without saying a word. He approached the building of the Velg plant against the backdrop of mountains and forest. He stands thoughtfully on the street, and another explains that he has a problem and asks what it is. He apologized for the intrusion, and the other man with a beard thought his character was just terrible. He, holding a long object, says that he would like to make a sword out of it. A man admires a divine arrow, and he admits that he doesn't know how he got it, but he thinks it's cool. The man asked to wait a little bit, and he gratefully replied, "Yes, thank you very much." He is confused and asks if he really should cry now. A man with a beard demands payment from him, not from his interlocutor, who in response admits that he has stopped understanding his speech. He is suddenly struck by an idea and then silently considers it. A man asks if he intends to use the sword he makes himself. He is shocked and threatens to say that he will never give up such a kid like his interlocutor. A man warns another that the sword will cry if he uses it, at which point the stone creature exclaims in surprise. He complains that he brought the item unfairly, and next to it there is a close-up of his strained eye. He asks if this means that if he asks, the other will give him something while claiming that he is not weak. He asked if his interlocutor was sure, and he replied that there was an opportunity to demonstrate his abilities and confirmed this. He asks if she doesn't mind getting injured if she fights whoever he chooses. He received instructions to come here in 7 days, to which he replied that he understood, while the other remained silent. The image shows falling crystals and a view of an ancient building under a cloudy sky. He admitted that it had taken some effort, and she was surprised at how much they had accumulated. He apologizes for the urgent request and asks to do everything by tomorrow, and she thinks that this is too difficult for her. She confidently asks him to rely on her, promising to cope overnight, and he reacts to her words with surprise. He thanked her, and she asked him not to overexert himself, to which he agreed. He says that he hunted phantoms for 3 days in a row, repeating this 3 times a day. The image shows a sky with clouds and tree crowns. There are no characters. He decided to strengthen his data by adding 47 to his physical and magical strength. He stands in front of a huge tree and pounds his fist on its trunk without saying a word. He hopes not to fight with strong creatures like a dragon or an octopus, while the other is happy with the result. He adds 15 points to the barrier and says that now we can continue. He creates a magical barrier by saying the word barrier. He suddenly rose into the air, preparing to attack, and focused on the target in front of him. He watches with rage as someone in the distance creates a powerful explosion on the desert plain. He shouts a spell and grabs the black tail, after which he announces that he has found the target. He sharply repels the attack aimed at him using the force coming from his hands. He thinks that he could deal with a lesser monster and now plans to use the earth structures and terrain to strike at the enemy. He presses the button labeled yes, choosing a positive answer. He explains that when the power limit is exceeded, the skill can be activated at any time, creating a protective dome directed against the enemy. He explains that the skill is 5 times more powerful and creates a protective dome that can even protect against dragon breath. He reflects on the ease of using the dome and the need to find a high-ranking monster to attack, noting the requirements and caution when using the skill. He warns that the boar will guard this place and says the word Vision X. He stands in front of the huge creature and notices that it has something, saying, "It has." He looks away and notes the high rank. It activates the warrior's defense with a 100% probability. He explains that the new ability allows him to strike from a distance, otherwise the monster could easily knock him down by accelerating. The image shows a large explosion or destruction with clouds of smoke and flying debris. He casts the warrior's protection spell while surrounded by electrical discharges on a dark background. He looks up in surprise when he notices an unusual pattern in one of his eyes. He delivers a powerful blow to an invisible enemy and then watches the explosion in the desert landscape. He is amazed to see the appearance of the devil dragon and wonders how this is possible and what he is doing here. They show an ancient monster with mutations and an artificially created demon, raised by highly intelligent monsters in a laboratory. A hand with patterns holds a test tube, explaining that this occurs by crossing two genes.